Aaron Beelner, and Eric B. And you're listening to the Diary of a Little Man's podcast. All right, you guys are here for the maiden voyage. The maiden voyage, the very, very first show with me and my buddy Aaron Beelner right there. You guys all know from everything from the Little Tin Man to Loki to more future projects that he's doing today. Aaron, go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, I'm Aaron Beelner. I'm an actor. I'm a father. I'm a human being. I'm a writer. I'm a little person. I'm all of those things. A man with dwarfism who's fighting off gray hair. I'm all of those things. And so this is an opportunity to discuss those. Yes. And I'm super excited. Thank you.
I'm Eric B. I'm here to, help Aaron with the story that we're going to talk about. The story that the podcast is called The Diary of the Little Man's Podcast, And we're going to talk about, in today's episode 1, we're going to talk about, I guess, the struggle, the stereotype that a little person always gets, whether it's real life, a grocery store, or even in the business that Aaron's in right now. But that's not what we're going to talk about moving forward. We're going to do this podcast every week, but we're going to talk about different things. Aaron talked about bringing in some guests, and that's something that we're going to talk about in the future when it happens. Follow us on Instagram, The Diary of the Little Man's Podcast on Instagram, and you can also follow us on our YouTube channel. And more platforms are going to be developing as soon as we get more shows going on in the future. And I can't wait for this. This is exciting to me because you and I talk off the record and off the books, and there's a lot of topics and things we want to talk about. And the first question, everyone's going to ask, Aaron, is what's the stereotype you get all the time as a little person?
In a nutshell, and I first off and foremost, Eric, thank you for this opportunity. This is excellent. And I do want to say, I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking on my behalf. I'm by no means speaking for every other little person or person with dwarfism or skeletal dysplasia. One thing that I think we need to talk about the stereotype is that, we're not, just because we're physically similar, we're still individual human beings. Yes, and so there's always that assumption of, oh, you're this person, and so everybody is like this. Okay, everybody that happens to be a person with dwarfism is obviously the same, and that's a horrific stereotype. And we see that, unfortunately, we see that with race, we see that with gender, we see that, oh, if you act this way or you're this way, then everybody's like that. Or if that person acts that way, then you must be like that because you happen to share, some type of idiosyncrasy. And so it's really, that in itself, I think, is probably the greatest stereotype, is that you all must be the same and you all act the same, and that there's a very unfortunately a very strong imposition of, we judge a book by its cover. We've all experienced this. Yes. And again, I'm unique in certain ways and not so unique because we all are humans. But we judge a book by its cover, so we assume, oh, you happen to be very short stature. I'm 4 feet and 3 inches tall, and I take pride in saying the 3 inches. I always want to, make sure everybody knows I've got a few extra inches. I'm 51 inches total, and yet not that in maturity, not that in mental stability, where people go, oh, look at this little guy. I'm sure he's like a kid. Yeah. And so you get those ideas imposed upon you. And I think that's one of the biggest stereotypes, is that, oh, we're all the same. And we also must be, childlike because we're, small statured. And so I'll tell you this, it doesn't happen anymore. But when I was younger, like patting on the head,
Oh man,
and especially like the elderly would come up to you and pat you on the head like you're a little kid. Yeah. And, you smile and you want to be polite, but you're also inside going, "Oh God, please stop." And so those are some of the bigger facets of that stereotype.
I mean, I'm guilty. I mean, I told you, off air, I'm guilty. I went to high school, and in this high school, it was my sophomore year, and this little guy comes in, and he's a little person, and everybody knows his name. His name is Eric, just like mine. He spelled it with a K, and I'm looking at him like, what's this little guy? This little guy, and he tried out for football, and everybody laughed. Everybody laughed. I'm like, all right, what are you going to be? And, the jokes come out, right? And it's, we were young, we were stupid. And I regret all the jokes that I told him in the past, but it was like, oh, what are you going to be, halfback? You can't, you can't be a quarterback because you're too small. So you have to, so all that stuff came about. And then, our coach back then was pretty strict when it came to how we treated each other. And he's like, if you treat one person differently, you're going to have to treat everybody, the same. So he was really strict on that, but you still had, these idiots, and I was one of the idiots growing up who didn't know how to treat a little person. It was the first little person I ever spoke to, I ever seen, right? And then when it came to hitting each other, football practice was serious. We all wanted that one position. This guy was killing everybody. He was killing me. I mean, he's a little smaller than me, and back then, I was probably like 5 foot, and he was killing me. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's strong. This guy's strong. Yeah, he's, it's like when he got the ball, I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to crack him. I'm going to hurt him. I'm going to make him not want to play football. And this guy put me on my back. And I've been playing football since Pop Warner. So I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm not going to let this guy run over me. But he did. Right. He ran over me. And I'm like, oh my God. So the respect started flowing in. Everybody stopped calling him the nicknames that we gave him. And we started calling him by his name. Hey, Eric. Hey, Eric. Hey, Eric. Hey, Eric. And then we stopped looking at him as a little person. We started looking at him as Eric, the football player. And then that same year, he tried out for wrestling. And, we had some wrestlers who were like, Ivy League wrestlers who were making fun of him also, who didn't play football, but they were like, oh, what are you going to do? How are you going to, take us down? But, in wrestling, we go by weight class, right? So it's not like the heaviest guy fights the smallest guy. It goes by weight class.
Right.
He was probably in the 120s at the time, solid, full of muscle, low to the ground, and he was killing everybody in all the tournaments. I think he made all city the 4 years that he was there. That's just how
I was going to say. I was going to add to that, interject, but that's when you said weight class, and he said 120, and he's solid. We're solid. And, more often than not, people with achondroplasia are very solid, very strong upper body. And so think low center of balance, low center of gravity.
Yeah.
No pun intended, but literally low center of gravity, strong upper body. Wrestling is like a blast.
Yeah.
I did not wrestle. I played basketball actually in junior high, and then I was on the golf team in high school.
Nice.
And I played golf. I was on varsity by my sophomore year in high school, and I was not, pun intended. I was not a long ball hitter, but I was very precise. I used to make the joke that I'm probably more dangerous at 150 yards with a 7-iron than I am with a gun. And then, when you think about the wrestling and all those sports, football and what have you, we're not as fast, physically run, not as fast, obviously. But when you're talking about quick movements and either on the line or hit somebody or whatever, I had an experience. I toured with Radio City for the Rockettes, the Christmas show for 3 years. And there was another guy on that production, one particular, I think it was in 2001, and he was teasing me or whatever. And I said, let's go. We were just goofing around, and I grabbed him and got my arm around his head and neck and went down with him, and he couldn't get out of that. And I wasn't going to hurt him. I didn't, that wasn't the point of it, but it was just to mess with him. And when I finally let go, he goes, God, I heard him over say to others, he's really strong and he's fast. And so, your friend Eric, I'm sure, held his own pretty well.
No, he did. I mean, like I said, when I first met him, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know how to treat a little person. And him and I became best friends, and he kind of told me exactly what you said, in the past was, I'm just a regular guy in a small man's body, and don't treat me any different than what I am. I'm not going to treat you any different than what you are, just because you're Filipino. The school that I went to, you had different groups of people. You had your African Americans, you had your whites, but we didn't hang out with that group, that social group. We hung out with, because we were jocks, so we hung out with the football players. And he's like, I'm not going to treat you any different because you're not, African American or you're not white. I'm going to treat you like who you are. And, he gained my respect. Him and his whole family ended up going to my high school, and they're all little people. And we, his mom was a blast, because his mom would come to school and she would bring us snacks for the football team. And I would say, I'm not going to say their name, but I was like, hey, Mrs., you made this? And she would crack a little person jokes like, yes, we can cook.
Yeah,
we cook better than
that's awesome.
We cook better than than the regular people. And the stuff she was making this apple turnover, and there was an apple turnover and something else she used to make. It was like a peach cobbler or something. Mm-hmm. I swear to God, Aaron, it felt like drugs to me, because I was, after I would eat one, I would call Eric, and this is like, you can't eat, this is before text messaging, so you're calling him, and I'm like, hey, does your mom have any more? Does your mom have any more? That's just how.
We scored some of that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's how good it was. Hilarious. And again, towards the end of, I graduated a year before him, and I never looked at him as a little guy. I looked at him as Eric, and, we would hang out after school. He would tell me, hey, I'm going to do a quick run, and do you want to join me? And, people would look at us, and people would look at him and like, oh, you run? The people that didn't know him, didn't know what he was. Like, you run? Right. And, I said, you know what, let's go another day. Well, I can't go today, but you go ahead and go, and we'll meet, another time. But again, it's just that how I treated him from the beginning to how I realized what he really is as a person. I mean, like, we fell off after high school, and that usually happens a lot. And, thank God for like social media and Facebook for bringing us back together. But it's not how we used to be when we were in high school. It's like he has his whole his life right now. I have my life. He's doing what he's doing, and I'm happy for him. And we still keep in touch. We still talk, and it's like, I'm happy that he's doing. He's excited for this show, because he said there is a lot of things that needs to be discussed and needs to be talked about.
I was going to highlight one of the things that you said, or one of the main things you said, that I think is very important to elaborate upon is, it's a fine line between, I don't want to be treated less, but I also don't want to be overcompensated for. I just want to be treated as a human being, and, I don't want any favoritism. I don't want, this is Eric or this is Aaron or what have you. And, they're little guys. And so we got to overcompensate and, and don't get me wrong, when you're younger, you take advantage of that. Of I will say I've done that. It was like, oh, wow, these people are willing to do stuff for me. This is a riot. Yeah. But then you have to overcome that, because you don't want to be, yes, we're all unique. Absolutely. But you want to be treated just like one of the guys, or, one of the girls, or whatever, or one of the humans, And so, whether it be sports, whether it be academics, whether it be life, whether it be whatever, there comes a point where you, like you said, Eric, where it's just, hey, that's Eric, or that's Aaron, or that's it. Yeah. And it isn't actually, I found this to be very intriguing. When you become just considered a human being, and then when you go out in public and others see you, and then the people who are around you that just treat you as Aaron or Eric or what have you are like kind of taken aback, because they're not used to that anymore. Yeah. They're not used to, why is this person acting like this about it? Because we just see him as Aaron. That's just Aaron. But then when it gets pointed out, and we had talked at the top of the show about stereotypes and what have you. That's one of the things that I think some days can be very annoying and very unsettling. And then some days you just take it in stride, where you go, all right, I'm going to go to the store. I got to go to the store today, or I've got to get groceries, or I've got to go wherever. what is going to be out there? You know what I mean? And who's going to say something ridiculous or whatever? And some days it rolls right off your back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some days you're like, oh, that, haha, whatever, especially children. Children are innocent and sweet. Yeah. And thus, I'm working on a series that I named Little Daddy.
Yeah.
And Little Daddy is based on a kid. Actually, he saw me and he saw the people I was around. And when they hear you speak, when a child hears you speak and you don't, I'm not talking like this. I don't sound like a kid.
Yeah.
I don't sound like a little child, but they hear that voice. And I remember this little girl looking around and she goes, that's a mommy. And that's a little daddy. And from that moment forth, that just kind of stuck with me. And I went, oh, there's something there, because the idea of, she saw it, she understood it, she grasped, this person is smaller, but they're an adult. And I thought that was very endearing. I have to, just because it jumped into my brain right now, I have to share this there's many stories of interactions with the outside world. And, but one in particular, there was a little boy and my significant other now, she was with me, and I'll tell you what, she was everything she could do to not bite her lip from bursting and laughing, because it was so sweet. The little boy saw me and he turned to his dad. We were like in line checking out at a store. And he goes, Dad, did that guy start small, get bigger, and then go back small again? And he was trying to rationalize how did this happen? And how is it? It looks like an adult, because I think I had facial hair at the time.
Okay.
And so he's putting that together and he's going, this is not a kid, but he's smaller. I mean, it was just so endearing. Did he start small, get big, and go small again? And so we were both chuckling. I mean, it was just great to see that, the wheels turning how people, the impression and how they absorb that, whether it be kids, adults, what have you.
And it was an honest question, right? It was an honest question.
Exactly.
The kid is wondering.
He had to be like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a really, really honest question. Yeah. It was an awesome question. And I was, I was chuckling inside and trying to, because I didn't want to, the one thing that I think a lot of people, little people, and again, I'm not speaking on everyone's behalf, but I'm sure they have faced this, is one of the things that I think adults try to do, parents try to do with children when children are pointing and, hey, look, and it's in public. And they don't mean this to be what it ends up being, but they'll scold the child. Hey, don't, be quiet. Don't talk, whatever. And what that actually does unintentionally down the road is it says, don't address this person. Don't acknowledge that. And so, and I mean, I don't think they're ultimately wanting that to be, they're embarrassed and they don't want their child to make that person uncomfortable. I get that.
Yeah.
But when they sit there and say, oh, don't look her, don't talk her, be quiet, whatever, then it inherently impresses upon the child that we don't acknowledge this. We don't address this. We don't talk, and we don't ultimately want that. We just want, hi, I'm married. So I make a point of it to kind of break the ice intentionally, when even if the parents are uncomfortable, like, hi, how are you? My name's Aaron. And then they start talking, and now you've opened a line of communication and there's humanity involved and, people are people and we just can talk. And kids, like you said, they'll ask anything.
Oh yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
Okay. They're honest.
They're honest. Yeah, they are. And they will see you, and the first thing they're thinking is like, wait, I hear an adult, but I see a little person, and their head starts thinking. And that's the cute thing about little kids. It's like their honesty when it comes to questions, and they don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. It's just they're just being real. They're asking the questions, and I
wish we would stick with that. I wish we wouldn't lose that.
Yeah,
we lose that as adults. And no, I'm not saying just say, which I'm totally guilty of, spitting out my inner monologue. I think sometimes people talk their inner monologue and I go, oh God, please don't say anymore. And I'm guilty of that. But there is something wonderful about that truthful innocence.
Yeah.
and that, they're just saying what they feel. And then, yes, we get older and we hold our tongues and we what have you. And I'm not saying say whatever's on your brain that's offensive, but don't be afraid to speak.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to inquire, because everyone is human.
Yeah. I mean, it's, Eric told me when we were growing up, and he said, you remember when you were in middle school, and I didn't know he knew this. He goes, remember when you were in middle school and everybody made fun of you because they were looking at you and you were brown skinned, but your English was better than half of the Asians that went to school there. And I was like, yeah, I hated that. I wanted to kick everybody's ass because of the way they were treating me. Then he goes, think of that situation where everybody thought that you were this person that didn't speak or understand English. Now use that anger and think of how I have to go through this every day. Someone looks at me and they say, hey, do you need a stool? Do you need a bar? Things like that.
That's a really awesome comparison.
Yeah, no, he did. He said people got mad. You were mad at them because they thought you didn't speak English because of the color of your skin. But when you spoke, they were like, whoa, you speak English. He goes, that's how I live my life every day. And again, that's how him and I became good friends, because he sees, even till this day, he sees the things that needs to be seen and he addresses them. And this guy, and I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the life that he has, and he's doing big things with his life. And I'm like, wow, this guy he's the reason why I became humble in high school. Let's just put it that way. If I didn't meet him, or if he never came across me, I probably would have been that asshole in high school that just thought he was better than everyone else. When it came to sports, I'm 5'5". I'm not going to get any taller. I'm the average Filipino height is what I am right now, but the average athlete is 5'9" to whatever, right?
Right.
So I'm not even an athlete. I'm not even, I can play golf, I can bowl, I can do all those little sports. But when it came to the sports I like doing, basketball, baseball, football, I wasn't the average height. So he humbled me when it came to that. He said, we're not going to get any further than what we're doing right now, because in high school, they don't care who plays as long as you can play. In college, they get a little more picky on who's on the field and who's playing. He goes, so enjoy what we have right now, and let's see where this can take us. And I was like, wow, this whole time.
That's a great, that's a great perspective.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic outlook. And I admire that. I could see where that would be very humbling as well. Absolutely. I think that's a universal message, that, whatever the situation, and whatever your stature, whatever your genetics, whatever, any of that, how you approach it mentally and spiritually with your heart. If you say you can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
If you put your best foot forward, even if you fail, the fact that you said, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to go for it, and what have you, and let's see what happens, is so much better than allowing, you said something previously that I went, oh yeah, that's very interesting. We all have preconceived notions. We all have preconceived assumptions about things, whether we pick them up, through others talking and what have you. And we assume, we always assume, which we're never supposed to do, that old saying, never assume. And then you learn. You learn by the direct experience of those people or whatever happened in that moment. And you go, oh my God, I would have never thought this. I would have never thought that this is what it was, but I'm glad that I learned from that. I'm glad that I had that experience, because it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about the person that I had these preconceived notions of. Yeah. I'll throw this in here now, and I want to talk about this down the road in another show. I mentioned this name because I've learned a lot from this individual. He was a wrestler, and he's known for wrestling. His name is Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
And Kevin is 6'10".
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
And I've worked with him in front of a camera, and I've kept up with him. And we have some projects we're working on, actually, that I'm super excited about. In the first conversation, any type of depth conversation I had with Kevin, he said, I've been known for all my life, and in the wrestling ring or in front of the camera as muscle, this big, intimidating persona. And he goes, I really would like to step outside of that and play a role where you see the inside and you see there's more to it than this big, intimidating guy. And I went, that is the polar opposite of the exact same thing I'm trying to do every day.
Yes.
So it isn't just about a matter of being a little person. It's look at this polar opposite. He's ducking under doors. This guy, wherever he moves, he's physically taking that into consideration as well, because he's not the average.
Yeah.
He's not the 5'5" to 6'2". He's 6'10".
6'10", yeah.
My God, he's like, I've had knee issues. I've had this, all of those things, which, by the way, I have to share this. That guy during wrestling had gone through, I think he told me 13 surgeries, wow. 2 of which were broken necks. I'm like, oh my God, he's broken his neck twice, not once, but twice. And he's still moving and he works out every day. And I mean, he's a go-getter. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about mind over matter,
Yeah.
When you put in your mind and in your heart, I'm going to conquer this. And I may not get it ultimately down the road. I may not have exactly what I hope for in the end result, but at least I tried.
Yeah.
That old thing, if you have one regret, please don't let it be that you never tried.
Yeah.
So when you come with that attitude, no matter what your situation is, and again, I don't consider myself as a little person to be the most difficult thing in the planet. There are people that have much greater obstacles that I admire and am humbled by every day. My oldest daughter is a swimmer, and she swims for the Paralympics. And I have gone to those meets and seen swimmers who I go, oh my God, look at what they're doing. This is awesome. Yeah. They're saying, I'm not going to be told no. I'm going to go. I'm going to give it 100%. So yeah, that's a very, back to what we talked about earlier, that fine line between, I don't want to be considered less, but I also don't want special treatment. Yeah. I don't want any favoritism. I just want to be considered a human being.
Yeah, exactly. I have this famous this quote that I came up with that ever since I started doing this podcast, and you were one of the guests that I reached out to. My motto is, you only get better every time you fail. So you have to fail in order for you to keep moving forward, to keep going. And when I reached out to you and all the other characters in Disney Plus or in other movies, half of them said no. And that first person that said no to me, I could have just said easily, like, oh man, this is not for me. This is not something I want to do, but for every 10 that I asked, maybe one would say yes. And if one would say yes, to me, that was a win-win for me, because now I'm getting this person, I'm getting you on my show. We're talking about this. We're talking about that. We're sharing stories. So being that person where you and I could easily not be doing this right now. If I said, no, I'm done, because, 3 people already said no to me. But I just kept going. I kept pushing. And from this day on, I'm still hustling. I'm still pushing. I'm still trying to reach out to people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I want to talk about that. Can I talk about when you reached out?
Go ahead.
Because I think that's very important as well. I mean, here we are doing this. I mean, we have never met in the flesh. We have never. You live in San Francisco.
Yes.
I live in Atlanta. Okay. Yes. And it was through Instagram. If I remember correctly, you did a message through Instagram.
Yes.
And I don't know what I have on Instagram. I told you this, and I'm going to expose this to everybody right now. I am not technologically advanced. Okay. Certain things I love math. I love science. I love the arts. But when it comes to some of these things, I'm talking to my daughters going, how do you do this? Because I have no idea what I'm doing here. And they're like, well, you do this, and then you can do that, and you can add this and get a story and a post and blah, blah, blah. So I have, I guess, a public account on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I got a message when it's a message that, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm a blithering idiot, but I am somewhat in this.
No, arena. You're not. Go ahead.
When I think I have it where if it's not somebody that's a friend or whatever follower, it goes into a different category, the messages.
Yeah.
So I open that up, and here's Eric Blahnik, and I'm going, and he wants to talk about Loki, which was an awesome experience. And we'll talk about some of that again down the road. It was really, like you said, you yourself had reached out to so many people, what have you, and so many respond and so many won't give you the time of day.
Exactly.
And I think, and again, I may incent some people when I say this, I think that's ridiculous. Now, granted, we all have schedules. You can't do every little thing under the sun.
Yeah.
But I think when you feel that you're too good for something is when you need to step back and reevaluate and realize who you are as a human being and try to be better.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that we're too good for.
Yeah.
As entertainers, as actors, as writers, producers, directors, the whole gamut, the list of all those different positions, you're learning. Whatever we do, whatever field you're in, you should be learning every day, and you should be humbling yourself every day, and you should be trying to improve every day.
Yep.
And so when you reached out, I went, yeah, let's talk. Let's do this. And it was awesome. That hour was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was
so cool. And it was so cool to talk about Loki. It was so cool to talk about the actors and the whole production crew. And that's the other crazy part of what I do is you go into those worlds. Okay. It's one thing to walk into a grocery store. It's one thing to walk into your CPA's office for I'm thinking of tax season right now. And I don't know why that went in my head, but it's when you walk into the entertainment world, it's not as glamorous as everybody thinks it to be. It's a business, and it's deadlines, and it's this hour, and this needs to be done. And when the hell do we get to eat lunch because I'm famished,
Yeah.
And we're going to push lunch a little bit because we need to get this shot in, and we're going to get that done because we're running behind, and blah, blah, blah. It's a rat race.
Yeah.
And so when you meet people in whatever venue, whatever arena of your life, career, what have you, you meet people that are open and want to just talk and just want to work and create and build something amazing. That to me is a real gift. That to me is the reason for existence.
Yes.
And so when you reached out, I was like, yeah, let's do this. I mean, here it is. It's February 12th, and we now have a podcast.
We have a podcast,
and thank God to you that we have a podcast, because if I was in charge of any of this stuff, we wouldn't have anything. I'd be like, I don't know what we're doing, and I'm learning as I go.
Yes.
I write a bunch. I've got how many series I've written and films I've written, but when it comes to running the machines to capture any of that stuff,
you're like,
I'm jello. I don't know what I'm doing, and so yeah, it's here we are, and we're talking, and why not open that path, that adventure, that chance to create something.
And the good thing about it is some of the movies that you were in, I got to sit down and watch. And these are movies that I probably never would have picked on my list of movies to watch. But I wanted to know Aaron Beelner. I wanted to know what he's like. I wanted to know what his characters are like. Other than Loki, when I reached out to you, I said, I want to talk to you about how you got to Loki. Like the movies you did in the past, the movies that brought you to Loki. And I saw movies that you were in, and I was like, wow, this is, again, this is movies that I like that I never would have said, I'm going to watch this. But I watched the Little Tin Man that you're in, and I was like, wow, it's like I felt your character in that movie. And for you guys who wants to watch it, it's definitely out there somewhere. I don't remember where I watched it.
It's on Tubi now.
Tubi.
I know it's on Tubi,
okay.
Which is, I think, free access, right?
Okay. I think
you basically download the app. You might have to watch a couple commercials.
Yeah.
But it's free access beyond that. I know it's still, if I'm not mistaken, on like Apple or iTunes, what have you. But Tubi's a very easy one. There's a few other free formats that I think it's still playing on. That film, if we can discuss that in a little bit now and maybe elaborate down the road. Yeah. That film I'm very proud of because of how we created that, what we did to make that happen, the very ridiculously small budget, the very ridiculously long hours, the whole premise it was almost like that thing was living itself out in real life. It's about a man who happens to be, how the lead has character has dwarfism. Imagine that. And he's just trying to prove himself in the entertainment industry beyond that shell of his body, that skeleton of being a little person. And yes, art imitating life, life imitating art. Of course, we wrote something that we were wanting to have, a message and something that we were very passionate about. And it was ridiculous, that whole shot. I mean, and everybody that was part of it can say the same thing. It was 18-hour days. It was, I think we shot that thing in 18 days. It was a full-length feature, and I think it's an hour and 24 minutes long, and we pulled that off in 18 days with ridiculous obstacles and things collapsing. Not physically collapsing, but like we had our first day, the location we had got pulled because there was a squabble between the people who said we could have it. So it wasn't anything we had done wrong. Yeah. They were just agreeing with each other, and they're like, no, you can't be here. And we're like, where the hell do we go now?
Yeah.
And so it was just a constant uphill battle in that whole process. And is it a phenomenal film? No. Is it a pretty damn good film? Yeah. For what we had to do. Yeah. And people ask that question a lot. You did that in 18 days for that budget? And we're like, yep. I mean, it was a lot of back scratching. It was a lot of people putting forth unbelievable efforts for very little compensation. And it was life. It was life. It was me going, this is like my day. Okay. This is like the hamster in the wheel, and I'm trying to get this puppy moving. And the more I spin around, it feels like we're going backwards. Oh. And so, but everybody has those days. Everybody has those moments in life where you're like, God, why does it feel like I'm in the mud?
Yeah.
Why does it feel like I'm in quicksand? So the Little Tin Man is beyond just the screen. It's a universal message of never giving up and pushing forth for what you want from the universe, what you expect from, all your labors and blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, it was a good movie. I felt the movie. When you and I had the show the last time, you told me to watch it, and it took me a little bit to watch it, but when I finally sat down and watched it, I was like, wow. And doing these interviews, interviewing you, interviewing other actors and actresses made me realize how tough, you mentioned how tough it is in the business. We on this side, we look at it as, oh man, I want to do that. Oh, I want to do what you're doing. Oh, I want to do this. But then when I hear, not just from you, but from everyone else, the trials, the tribulations, the how many takes, like we're watching a TV or a movie, we see a 2-minute scene that you guys shot in like 8 hours.
Right.
And it's
I want to interject if I may.
Please.
So in The Little Tin Man, the writers and directors should be, forever cursed for this. I spent more time in spandex than I ever wanted to spend in different costumes. And I remember one night in particular, you hit a wall. You just hit a moment. You've had that in life and work, whatever, where you're just like, I got to go home. I can't do this anymore. And yet you have to. You have to. You can lie in front of the camera only so much. And if you lie to the point of breaking that fourth wall or breaking that character, your audience will know. And I had it. I was wearing the Tin Man spandex, actually. And I was exhausted. And we were it's the scene where he runs away from the security guards because he's trying to get to Martin Scorsese. And I was cooked physically, mentally. That had been a long day and I was cooked. And I remember the director coming up to me, and actually the film itself is dedicated to my mother. She had passed away before we filmed that. And he looked at me and he said, let's do this for Audrey May. And it was that mental moment where I go, okay, no matter how tired you are, no matter how emotionally spent you are. We have to conquer this. We have to put forth. And so that was a great lesson in itself. We as actors, entertainers, whatever title you want to slap at us, there's a reason we do all of this. And a lot of it has to do with insanity, I think. Because people ask, why do you do that? And I go, because it's in my blood. It's something I do. It's something I love. And well, what do you get from it? There is an insatiable high that no drug or no other experience for me could come close to when you're creating and you're building and you're making something from the ground up.
Yeah.
And people want to see it or experience it or listen to it or whatever it may be, however they take it in and they enjoy it and it does something for them. It affects them. It opens their heart or it makes them think about something they would never think about. That's ultimately why you're in the business. On the other end of that, just like you said, it's exhausting. It's grueling. It's a business. It's a business. Before anything else, it's a business. I make the joke, it's like legalized prostitution. Yeah. We're selling ourselves. We're selling ourselves, whether it be our writings, whether it be our direction, whether we're selling our minds and our bodies and our souls, we're selling ourselves. And if you like it, great. If you don't, okay, we go to the next door and knock on that door and see if they want to buy. I mean, we're literally selling ourselves. And so when you have all of that behind the scenes going on, and of course, as a viewer, you or a listener or however you take it in, you don't see any of that.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, you shouldn't, because if you did, you'd be like, shut this off. This is nuts. So, but when you can relay that and emote that message in whatever you're creating, and people absorb that and understand that and grasp what you're going for, that is an ultimate high. Yeah. That is an amazing experience. I mean, we're in this podcast and we're having a great, I love talking.
Yeah, so do I.
Wow, he loves to talk. But it's more than that. It's the interaction and it's the learning and it's the building. And then it's going back to the drawing board and going, all right, what's the next show? All of that is to me why we exist. It's humanity and it's exposing that humanity.
And the positive thing is, everything is positive, but since I interviewed you and a few others, it kind of gave me that, do I want to try to get into acting? Is this something I want to do? I don't want to be the forefront of the screen. I don't want to be the guy I want to be the guy in the background that if the scene was so serious, I'm the guy that's coming in that's going to crack a joke and kind of just, make everybody laugh. I don't want to be the guy who's like, save his life, save her life. Right. I want to be the comical guy that every time he's in a scene, he's going to crack a joke or do something funny. That's how I am in real life. I'm the guy at work where everyone's so serious and I'll come in there like, God, did someone die? Why are you guys all quiet? Geez,
right.
We work in a hospital, not a funeral home. Come on, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what I would say to that? Like I said, I think we were talking before the show started. If you have one regret, please don't let it be that you never tried.
Yeah.
So when people go, I want to try that. Well, then do.
Yeah.
Go for it. See what happens. I think that the one thing that when you're in whatever we do, whether it be entertainment, whether it be, service industry, whatever, the one thing that you have to keep in check is the ego, because people go, okay, that person's doing that. I want to do exactly that. I want to be just like them. Well, that's impossible.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't get in this industry to replicate someone else's experience or career. I got into this industry because I have a passion for creating and building and emoting and discovering and building again and starting all over and failing.
Yeah.
To be point blank, you have to be comfortable with failing and not failing like, oh, all I ever do is fail. I feel if all you ever do is fail, you're not learning something from that previous failure. Okay.
True.
We all fall on our faces. All right. All the time. If you learn from when you fell on your face, it may not be so much of a fall the next time.
Yeah.
And then it gets better and better and better. Okay. We're always trying to improve. We're always trying to build. And so, yeah, this, you hear the Mark Ruffalo story of where he like auditioned 600 times. I think that was the number. I don't remember what it was and not exact, but it was like 600 times before he got a call.
Yeah.
That's not unrealistic at all. That's spot on. I mean, somebody sees something and somebody catches something. And, as a person with dwarfism, as an actor with dwarfism, I'm trying to break outside of, okay, they're going to cast you in this same character. They're looking for the Oompa Loompa.
Yeah.
I don't really want to do that. They're looking for the leprechaun. I'm going to pass on that. They're looking for the human with a unique perspective. Bingo. I'm in. Let's try that. And so, you're more often than not, you don't hear from, you do an audition, you try something, and it does, the percentage of success from just in the audition process is so minimal. For every one you get, you probably did 200 before that.
Yeah.
And there's that inherent necessary need to be able to push forward and go, all right, this is the game. This is, we're all going to fail, and learn from that and give your best on the next one. So it's a very tough industry for that, just for the average human being, let alone any unique perspective. But what I am, and I wanted to discuss this, Eric, before the show wraps, I wanted to get this out in this hour. We're just simple numbers, just the idea of, I was looking this up the other day, and the world population supposedly is like 7.9 plus billion.
Yeah.
And it keeps, the increments jump every 5 seconds. There's a birth, like one every 5 seconds or something ridiculous in this whole planet. The US population is roughly about 332 million, about 332.5. The reason I mention those numbers is when you look at like people with dwarfism, that range is how they say it is really perplexing to me, because they won't, and I got a lot of this information from like Johns Hopkins, which has their own particular skeletal dysplasia department. Like 1 in 15,000 to 1 in 40,000 births. That's quite a range.
Yeah. So
if we average that, we say, okay, one from 1 in 15 to 1 in 40,000, that's roughly about 27.5 thousand. One in 27.5 thousand. We'll just go right there. Okay. I say these numbers for a reason. Imagine the US population of like 1 in 27.5 thousand births out of 332 million. Just by those numbers alone, it's just shy of like 9,000 people in this country. I'm not talking the world, just in this country, because supposedly it's like there's anywhere from 200,000 to 250,000 people on this planet right now as I speak that have some type of dwarfism. But just in this country, there's maybe just shy of 9,000 people. It's hard to have a voice.
Yeah.
With those kind of numbers in the entertainment industry, because you want representation, you want equality, but you also know there's reality.
Yeah.
And reality goes, 9,000 people? Supposedly, and these are no more numbers after this, I promise. For the rest of the show, no more numbers. Supposedly, 20% of this country has some form of disability. Yet in the entertainment industry, there's only about 2% representation.
Wow.
That's what I'm fighting for.
Wow.
That's what I think every human being, whether it be gender equality, whether it be racial equality, whether it be physical equality, what have you, all different shapes and sizes. We're not asking for special treatment. We're not asking for favoritism. We're just asking for a chance to get on the team.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
so I think those are very important, things to address as we move down the path of this. And I definitely want to do some guests come in and, talk different topics, and I think if I'm not mistaken, and not to show our hand here, but we could get people to contact, the site or what have you with questions.
Yeah.
And I think we should address those questions,
yeah.
And I've said to you, there's nothing off limits. Yeah. There's always a way to, of course, I try. I'm not very good at this. I try to be elegant and eloquent when I speak or when we're addressing whatever topic, but I'm also human. I make truckloads of mistakes. I intend to offend no one. And yet I probably will offend someone. And I don't mean that by any means. And I'm all for, if I do, I will aptly apologize, but there's nothing off limits here. And as far as a human being who's a father, actor, with achondroplasia, all of those things, I think we should attack anything.
Definitely. I mean, this is definitely what the podcast is about. I mean, you're a voice in the world that you live in, and you're going to have a lot of people, especially moving forward when this podcast blows up. And I know it's going to blow up. I know a lot of people is going to listen. A lot of people is going to watch it. We're going to be available on YouTube as well. And I know people are going to ask the questions, and these are questions you already heard, in your lifespan. And some people, again, I mentioned earlier, some people, they're not being dumb or ignorant. They're just curious. And
you're right. And there's nothing wrong with curiosity.
Yeah. And
I mean, I think there are people who are intentionally malicious.
Yeah.
And I pity that soul.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more often than not, it's just pure curiosity.
Yeah.
And they're not out to hurt or to offend. They're just curious. And you know what? I'm probably, as I'm sitting here with my imaginary can of worms and my can opener, and I'm twisting it right now when I say this, I'd be curious because every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I've never had that question before. And let's, so I say, let's open the door to that. Nothing is off limits and within due reason. I mean, we're open here. If I'm not mistaken, Eric, we're open to all different demographics and ages and what have you for listeners and viewers. So yes, we will answer almost any question within reason, because we don't want, to have certain ears hear things long before they should, or, certain perspectives go, what is he talking about? I don't, Mom, Dad, Aaron said them wrong. No, because then I don't need people calling on, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Like, so,
Within reason.
Yes, we always have to put that disclaimer.
Yeah, within reason.
4 syllables.
And again, if you guys are going to reach out to us, we got platforms. You can reach us on our email, the Diary of a Little Man's Podcast at gmail.com, the Diary of a Little Man's Podcast on Instagram. If you guys reach out to us and ask us questions, and we feel like your question is not going to be answered, or we don't want to answer your question because it's something irrelevant of what we're talking about, don't be offended if we don't answer that question, because we're going to filter the questions, and I'm going to reach out to Aaron. Hey, these are the questions that we got. How do you feel about these questions? And if you feel comfortable enough to answer them, that's fine. We'll read them. But if you do ask questions that's totally irrelevant, it's something we don't want to talk about, Aaron doesn't feel comfortable talking about it, we're not gonna answer it. So just putting that out there right now.
And I'll go one step further on that. I will try my best to answer every question within reason. If it's something that's a little itchy or a little, uncomfortable, I'll still try to attack it and address it in a way that would answer the question adequately, without, going too crazy.
Yeah.
Because again, I think we're only human, and I think it's great when you start something like this where people realize here's a forum where we can just throw it out there.
Yeah.
And we can address, yes, I'm a human being with achondroplasia, which, by the way, I'll throw that out there. Achondroplasia is the most dominant type of all types of dwarfism. There's like over 300 different types, and I don't know all of them, so we're not going to have a test. And achondroplasia is basically the difference between like a person with achondroplasia and let's say a person with like pituitary dwarfism is if you remember, and I'm dating myself here, Eric, so don't, like, to the younger crowd, like, remember the character of the man who played Tattoo in Fantasy Island? That was pituitary, where they're all in proportion. Okay. He just looks like a very little man, where I am not in proportion. My trunk, as they call it, which is your spine. I don't know why they say trunk. I feel a little, elephant Titus with that. But my spine is of average size. My head is a little bit bigger. My arms and legs are shorter. So, like, in a car, I've had people say this to me. I had a teenage kid say this to me. He's like, you get out of he's like, I looked at you in the car and you're sitting up above the steering wheel and you look really tall in the car. And then you got out. And he's like, what's going on? And I mean, he was really perplexed. He's like, what's going on? So then I got back in the car and sat in the car, and I said, he was actually a student I had. He said, look, okay. And he goes, wow, it's like an illusion. And he was like, you're like really tall in the car, but then you got out and you're like the same height as a window. And I'm like, thanks. And it was like, but it was a great perspective, because in his brain, he's going, how's this working? Yeah. I remember there was this little boy once, he was walking by me and he was doing his best not to let me notice he was staring. And I'll say this, and I can't speak on behalf of all little people, but or all people, any person with a disability, but we have, for lack of a better word, this innate ability to sense things. Yeah. And you can tell when someone's staring. You can tell, because it's like these, bionic beams that just start burning into your flesh, and, you can see, but you don't want to, like, be, well, there are some days where you're like, screw it, I'm just going to address this. But then there are days where you're like, okay, I'm not going to embarrass this person. But this little boy is just doing his best to not, and he was dressed to the nines, had this cute little suit on, little loafers, everything. And he's standing maybe 2 feet from me. And under his breath, I hear, what happened to that guy? And I was laughing. I'm biting through my lip, and I'm laughing so hard because, what happened to that guy? And, innocence again of a kid. Course. But curiosity, the old saying, curiosity killed the cat. But I think curiosity is what makes things greater. We learn. Yeah, we do. How we act on that curiosity, I think, is the most important thing as far as being kind and empathetic to others. Yes. Yes, it's true. We're all entitled to think. Yeah. Nothing wrong with thinking and questioning. That's what makes this planet better. Yeah. It's how you act on that really makes it amazing. Yeah. Because yes, we all can be insensitive assholes. We all can be. Yeah. But if you go, I'm curious about that. Now in my brain, think about how I like to open that Pandora's box, if you will, and learn without being offensive. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have coworkers with disability, and I would ask them, hey, if this is too forward, please let me know. But how do you do certain things with your disability? And you know what? What I found out with the people that I work with and people that I met with disability, they're more than happy to share their story with you, because they want you to know that no matter what their disability is, they're still going to find a way to get whatever needs to be done. And they're not going to ask you for help unless they really need your help. That's why they ask you for your help. And I want to add to that, if I may. That in itself is empathy. Yeah. And contrary to what our society may be exuding right now, I don't think empathy should be dead. I don't think empathy should be a fossil. There's nothing wrong with inquiring about someone else's position. And hopefully, for the sake of not belittling them, not for making them feel ostracized, not for making them feel like, oh, you're pitying me, but just reaching out. Yeah. And maybe if they need help, you're there. Yeah. 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 And if they don't, they know, okay, hey, I learned from that. What have you? If they need my help, I'm there. If they don't, I respect that too. Yes. It's, I think we all of us, this entire planet, especially in 2022, when I thought we were so advanced and so civilized, I think sometimes, well, more often than not, we need to step back and go, how do we look out for each other? Yeah. Without offending, without segregating, without ostracizing. So
I mean,
it's very important.
We have a long battle ahead of us when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, it's like the past 5 years, it feels like we went backwards in life. So hopefully moving forward, you're right. Empathy is there. If everyone can feel empathy, I'm pretty sure the world would be a better place. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than what we have.
No, of course not. I mean, there's human error and there's flaw. Everything's, there are flaws everywhere. We all have flaws, and not to get, too crazy, but that idea of if you just treated others the way you wanted to be treated. Yeah. I mean, I think we would solve a lot of issues. We would solve. I mean, just the humanity that this could be for a different podcast, different topic. Yeah. Well, it could be, but it also is what we're addressing. I mean, we're talking about a difference. We're talking about, you had brought in your own personal stories, which I think is fantastic, and I want more of, Eric. As a child from not the white race, and you have your own personal experiences. Yeah. No, funny story. Finishing off, Eric. He's a freshman. I'm a sophomore. And you had your junior, senior proms, and then you had your regular dances with the other classmates. He's getting ready to go to the senior prom, and I'm like, dude, you're a freshman. Who invited you to the senior prom? Sure enough, the person who became prom queen for the senior prom invited him to the prom. And if you want to talk about this guy's status went from 0 to 60. Oh, I know. Yeah. Can we open that up in the next show? Yeah. Let's talk about, let's go right in. You said it. As soon as you said prom, I was like, all these things came spinning back. So I think we should, if you're cool with it, let's start with the prom and let's move around that time and go in. We can go backwards into younger childhood, whatever, but we can address some things that, oh my God, it just opened up a whole, I've got a closet in here going, oh yeah, I remember that. And I remember that and the prom and the experience. And I'm from a very small town. And so literally a very small town. Of my high school class, graduating class was 31 students. Oh, wow. The whole school, the high school was 130, 140 at best. Wow. 9, 10, 11, 12. 140 kids. I mean, that's small. Yeah. And so but even at that, there were pros and cons to that, being a person, with achondroplasia. And let's go. We're going back to the prom, Eric. Yes. We're getting our boutonnieres on. We're going to get those rented tuxes on, or whatever the hell we were wearing at that time. I call the powder blue tuxedo. All right. Don't wear the powder blue tuxedo, because that's the one I'm wearing next week. Okay. All right. Fine. You wear that. I'm going to dig something. Now you're opening. Wow. Now you're really opening. All right. Now you put me up to something. I know what I'm wearing for the next show. Oh my God. Got it. All right. Now I got to look for something. All right. I got to look for something. We got to do it. This has been fun. Aaron, thank you for a great first episode. And I'm looking forward to this, again, expanding to something more. Everyone who wants to listen to us, we're going to be available on Anchor Podcasts for now, but I'm working on the Spotify. I'm working on Apple. I'm working on Google. Once this podcast is set up, I can set that up, and it'll be a lot easier for you guys to listen to whatever platform you want to listen to. So for now, it's going to be available on Anchor FM. I don't know the whole word, but I'll leave the description down below. Again, follow us on Instagram, the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast on Instagram. Follow us and message us on our Gmail account, the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast at gmail.com. And you could also, message Aaron himself. If you have questions, you can message me. We're very easily accessible. And if there's questions you want to ask, please ask. I always say a question not asked is probably the dumbest question you don't ever ask. Because if you don't want to ask, we can't read your mind. If we could read your mind, we'd be millionaires right now. And there's a missed opportunity then. Yes. We have a missed opportunity. So, and the worst thing is no matter what, throw it out there. We'll see what we can do. Yes. Yes. I want to thank everyone who's going to come listen. Thank you guys. I'm looking forward to this show in the future. I cannot wait I feel this show is going to be successful. I can't wait for the people you want to bring in. There's a couple of people I want to bring in as well moving forward. And I can't wait for that. So until next week, guys, thank you guys for listening. For you guys on YouTube, thank you guys for watching.
The Diary of the Little Man's podcast is ended, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, guys.
And you're listening to the Diary of a Little Man's podcast.